I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, live episode number 112. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Okay, well, welcome everybody to Velocity Work Live. Today we have a very special guest, someone I've grown very fond of over the last almost 7 months now, which is crazy. We'll talk more about that. But this is Christopher White. I thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.
I am pumped to talk to you about all the things. On this show, our intention is to get entrepreneurs on the show to have a conversation where we can crawl up in their brain and learn how they think, what they think about. That might sound scary to you, but it's going to be super fun. Don't be nervous.
I'm looking forward to it, and fair disclaimer, it is what it is in there, so it's not clean.
That's exactly right. Well, a few things I wanted to share. I have some bullets here in front of me about you that I think would be really helpful for everybody to understand before we dig into conversation and questions. But so you're on your 11th year of growing a firm.
Right.
You started out, it was just 2 people. Now it's 22 people. You had 1 location. Now you have 6 locations. And you were serving 1 county, and now you're serving 28 counties. And this is unique that I don't talk to many people that are general practice. So you have 36 different practice areas. It's like, I mean, you have a big thing going on, and
you're making me anxious just saying it.
Well, I know, right? But I would love to dig into that a little bit in the conversation with you. But you are an author, you're a speaker, you're a teacher, you're a mediator, negotiator, and a strategist. You have created a benchmarking formula for projecting the size of legal markets, which we are definitely going to talk about that today because that's super exciting. You are the leader of a specialized operational team that's systemizing the delivery of legal services, measuring key performance indicators, branding an innovative and empowering approach to law practice, and maintaining cultural touchstones and values essential to a collaborative team across a broad geographic area. So we're going to dig into that too, because in that bullet, even though it's really long, there's a lot of, I want to say talent, but I think it's skills that you've developed to make that
definitely a team that I've developed around me. So definitely that. It was a mouthful when I wrote that for you, but it's definitively not everything that I do.
Yeah. Your former super producer which I love that transitioned to a full-time strategic leader, a developer of a multi-million-dollar multidisciplinary practice based initially in rural communities. And then an entrepreneur that formed a rural co-working model, risespaces.com, and a statewide DIY legal document platform, launchlawinc.com. So you've done a lot. And, I was reading more about you and had learned things in reading about you that I didn't know previously. So I am excited to dig into all the things there. And I think it would be helpful maybe to share and give some context on how I met you.
Yeah.
We met on Clubhouse, which is crazy to me. I didn't meet many people on Clubhouse that I stayed in contact with, but you were one of them. And we had a conversation offline and really enjoyed that. And then we started working together pretty quickly on a project that we've been working together sort of under the radar since February.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So now we're September. So yeah, that's 7 months. It's
I
crazy.
definitively will say you are one of the longest term contacts on Clubhouse that I made, because things in my life got crazy after that. And it was only because we had an initial contact in
Yeah.
Clubhouse and then followed it up. I barely check
Yeah.
in there anymore. So it's
Same.
just things got crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. So, so that's how I know you. And here's what I've learned about you or from you since I met you. You are an impressive human in that, number one, I don't know any GP and I work with a lot of lawyers who own their own firms. I don't know any other GP who has done what you're doing and has thought the way you've thought about it and has gone against today's wisdom of, niche down, niche down, niche down, or, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, but there's no one right way. And you've really proven a model that works, especially within the community that you live, to build what you've built and not be a niche. As a matter of fact, that probably would not serve you if you were that is in the
We just
community
don't
that you're
have
in.
the population base
Yeah.
that a lot of major markets do. That not being said, that I don't have a couple members on my team who are very niche
Mm-hmm.
practitioners
Mm-hmm.
inside of the team, but
Right.
they're not isolated. They're not on an island. They
Yeah.
tap into everybody that we have. But yeah, it would not have worked. So I had to figure out how to make a GP work effectively in an expanding model. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
and the blushing's there. I mean, impressive. Being called impressive is one thing.
I mean, since I've met you, you've opened a new location. You opened a co-working space. Your sixth location, and then
Yep.
the co-working space. Is that all in one spot? Actually,
No. Two different spots.
yeah. Right. Like you just have a lot going on. You have a big team, and things are going really well. And it's not always easy. I mean, you and I have
No.
talked about that too. It's not easy, but it's impressive to see how you show up with and for everything. And just behind the scenes conversations that we get to have, it's like everything that you're dealing with and that's coming your way, you take it in stride and you keep your cool. I'm sure there's moments, right? But you
There
keep
are
your cool.
definitely moments.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have those moments, by the way.
But
Yeah.
the thing is I try, no matter how many things are happening, I try to have one simple maxim that I do every single day is decisions are made, problems are solved. If I've
Mm,
made a decision to do something, I'm committing to solve the problems until I can no longer do it. And
mhm,
so I'm just a decision maker day in
mhm,
and day out. I contribute to solving problems that I can handle and my team takes care of the rest. And
mhm,
that is when it's that black and white, when it's that simple, it makes handling a complex and multifaceted business legal team endeavors really boil down to just what's the next decision, what's the next
mm,
problem. I'll do what I can with that and then move on.
yeah.
And so if I let the stress build up on me and then I start inverting it and I start putting all the problems in front of me, I never make the decision.
Right.
And if I make bad decisions, I just move on from them as quickly as possible. So those
Mhm,
are the things that help me navigate a very busy day.
mhm. Yeah. Well, okay. So we've given a little bit about your background and that, like, this is where you are now.
Yeah.
Now, day to day, if you're not making decisions and solving problems, something's wrong, right?
Right.
But this didn't start this way. So,
No.
how long ago did you start your firm? And what was it like lifting that firm off the ground? Like, there's like startup phase and then you have an established business. So I want to know from you what that was like. When was it and what was it like?
Well, sure. And this is my second career. I was a teacher in my first career. And then because I make poor life decisions, I went to law school and then went on and opened the firm actually with my father in 2010. He was what in Ohio is called a common pleas court judge. So think felonies, domestic relations, those kind of mismatch of civil and criminal suits that are the higher end. And he had been for 21 years and he was ready to retire. And he thought, hey, you're going to law school. And I thought, hey, you're getting ready to retire. So let's open up just a pop sun local practice. Just the two of us. We'll try and lean into technology, do high speed, low drag. And fast forward 11 years later, and like you said, there's 22 of us, and we're serving over a third of the state of Ohio. So it would be nice to say that it just zipped right through and that was the plan all along. But this plan has been evolving, and
Mhm.
is the success we experience now is the result of a series of failures, series of tried experiments, failures, recouping and repiecing things together, and growing together. And also growing together, even in a what was originally a family practice and is not now a family practice anymore. It's a corporate entity that has its own identity in and of itself.
Mhm.
And so Tom said it well. He said, we were at two different positions in our life. Me, press the gas, him, I'm getting ready to slow down. And that
Mhm.
created a need for us to find that rhythm, that positioning, finding the right team members, identifying who we were so we could attract the right team members. I mean, all of that was just a series of failures. And one of my favorite biographies is about the space program in the 60s. And one of the statements in there is, all our rockets exploded. And early on in the space program, before you ever got a man to the moon, before you ever put anybody up there consistently, their rockets just kept blowing up on the pad. And I felt that on a deep, visceral level. All my rockets were exploding. I was a small
Mhm.
town attorney. I was very busy with what was the oil and gas boom in Ohio, traveling all the time. I was 60, 70, 80 hours a week, trying to run a business, trying to grow a business, pulling down $650,000 a year, in billables, still not having to make decisions about what to pay and when. And it was just hell. It was
Mhm.
not, there was no joy, no life. It was just sucking me dry.
Mhm.
And I remember very clearly sitting at a table in 2014 upstairs, and it was one of those 70-hour weeks, and I was carrying 200 clients in the oil and gas field, and I just was sitting there, and I had a pile on my left of what I had to hold to pay, I had the checkbook in front of me, and then I had the pile to my right of what I was going to pay right that evening, and then wait on the rest of it. And I
Mhm.
sat there and I pushed myself back and I looked at this and I'm like, I'm really bad at this. I'm
Mhm.
really, really bad at this. I'm
Mhm.
not doing well.
Mhm.
And that night was the start of a journey towards what we are now, towards
Mhm.
saying, what am I good at? What am I really, really good at?
Mhm.
And what do I need to find other people to do?
Mhm.
My wife came on as HR, helped me try to start retooling, turned our turnover rate way down.
Mhm.
To the last couple of years, only a couple of people have left, and that's simply because it was time. It was time
Mhm.
for them to go. And We hired my CFO, and she, quite honestly, she hates it when I say this, but I'll put her up against anybody else in the industry for understanding law firm finances, because
Mhm.
she has thrown herself into understanding it and knowing what's going on. I hired my IT and tech executive admin, and
Mhm.
she has a high school degree and knows more about our systems than anybody else I know, and is right
Mhm.
now pushing all the boundaries on our systems to the point that we're like, we want to do this. And she's finally saying to me after 6 years, the systems don't do that anymore. We
Mhm.
can't do that. We need to figure out another way, another system, another platform to do this
Mhm.
inside of. And then my marketing and branding guy who came on board and took us from 40 to 50 intakes a month to July, we had 300 people call the firm in
Wow.
1 month and 147 new matters created.
Wow.
And just every time I made a choice to spend off a part of the firm to somebody else, we leapt forward.
Mm.
In a matter of months, we would leap forward, or a matter of a year or two, we would leap forward. Every time I was willing to say the emperor has no clothes, and I really am doing a bad job with this, and gave it to somebody that became their job, they just took off with it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I love everything you're saying. And I know that people watching this will be like, yeah, like either I need to do that or yes, I have done that. And they can identify with pieces of what you're saying. But I think more people watching this need to do that, or they're going to be at a point where they need to do that. So my question to you is, because now, and this is crawling up in your brain territory,
Yep.
now it's clear as day to you. Like you can look back, it's hindsight's 2020, and but in the moment, the decisions probably felt messy and probably felt like a huge risk. And so how did you evaluate, like, yes, that's a huge indicator that like, I'm bad at this. We need to figure this out. How did you decide like this is the right time to make this investment? I mean, did you just have the cash like cushion on hand where it easy peasy, or was it like,
Oh, no.
this is risky? So like talk about that, how you made those calls and what the fears were and how they played themselves out.
Well, I will say this. The first decisions in that route were simply gut. It was simply going, I need somebody better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And this should work better.
Mm-hmm.
When I hired Irene on as my CFO, she came on board. The entire first year she spent undoing what I had done for the previous 5 years, and resetting and putting in controls and finding savings. And it only became evident about 18 months into it, she's paying for herself by everything she's saving us. And, freeing up my time to be more valuable, to be doing more with what I'm good at, which was driving more work to the firm. When it came to, Erica, and it came to Jordan, and it came to my wife coming on full time in HR, things were starting to make more sense. We started to figure out how to measure the impact of what was going on. What is the impact of turnover rates being higher? We can measure that. What is the impact of each matter coming in and having somebody dedicated to getting more? Because in a GP practice, sure, you have specific marketing techniques that you need for each kind of practice, but how do you get brand saturation? I don't know. I went to law school. I have an undergrad in theology. I don't know how to brand saturate a market. And so we started being able to get smarter as we went along, because we were able to measure and quantify the impacts that we were having when we weren't having somebody focus on an area, when we were taking away from our attorney's production time in an area. And the reality of it is you kind of already read that even took me out of production, because I had to step away from being the lead producer, lead originator in the firm, to the degree that I'm still the lead originator based on relationships that I created when I was full-time in practice. I had to step away to lead. Because a growing team of attorneys and operations and support people needs somebody focused on what is, and now specifically what's next. Where are we going? How are we growing? Where are things going? So yes, it was messy. Yes, I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And it was only through trial and error, and then seeing the data come in, that we could start to say quantifiably, this makes sense. Now, a lot of your listeners may not be in a similar situation where I am, in a rural environment with 43,000 people in your entire county, where you have to bring people in-house, because there aren't remote service providers, there aren't virtual service providers who understand your market. And so my investment is much more dollar heavy, whereas some of your people who are watching right now, they may be able to have, C-suite, fractional C-suite people come in and help them with that. But that just doesn't exist in our area. That isn't something I have access to. And so
technically what you're saying is you could do that, but you'd be wasting your money, because they just don't get it. Like they're not dealing with many people that have the same set of circumstances that you have.
No, they don't.
That right? Yeah.
My in-house team fundamentally understands who we are and how we operate, and our values by which we operate.
They
and
are the
engaged.
community.
Yeah, they're engaged every single day. On how we want to be, who we want to be.
Yeah. Well, okay. I know it's going to seem like I'm harping on this, but I'm just curious if I can get to it. if you can go back and remember when, okay, that first time when it was just like, it was almost not an option. It almost didn't matter to you how much it costs. It sounded
Yeah.
like I just like, this has to happen.
Yep.
So, okay, with that scenario, did how, when it came to, I think most of the reason people struggle with this decision is money
Yeah.
and figuring out where they are with things. So were you basically willing to take a pay cut if it meant that this would be taken care of? I guess you were willing, not that you had to sacrifice, but it was like, if this is going to work out in a way where I need to give more to the, if I need to cut some of from what's coming to me in order to make this happen, I'm willing to do that. You were at that place.
Absolutely.
There's
And
that.
I will say it was all gut, meaning yes, it was like a crisis situation that
Yeah.
a change needed
Yeah.
to happen. I did do the simple math of saying, if this person adds back in 10 hours a week to my time of billable time,
Yes.
this is
Okay.
how I offset that. This is how I offset that investment. And
Yeah.
so there was very simple math that we've since gotten much more sophisticated at. But
Right.
even that simple math of saying it's taking me this much time a week to do this,
Yeah.
I can even just redirect that
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
into something else. What can I make off of that?
And this is, I think this is important because so many people, here's the thing, in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of people that enter the game of being a business owner, and you can stay a business owner, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have an entrepreneurial way of thinking, you can't keep the mentality that you need assurance, because assurance isn't a part of the deal. So you do take risks. And I think sometimes people want the sophisticated math to prove to them, to assure them that this is the absolute right decision. And you can't get that. So this is a really good thing, I think, for people to hear, is that you did simple math to see like, okay, if I can get 10 hours a week back, then, and I spend that 10 hours a week generating or, producing, like making money, whatever that looks like.
Right.
Then we're good. That's at its core, that's what needs to happen. And the simple math is what you chose to move forward with. You didn't do no math, which in a crisis situation, maybe sometimes I can see where people like skip the math and are like, whatever it takes, man.
Right.
So, but you did do simple math. And I think that's smart and wise. And you turned that, you were taking a chance. And you turned that into an opportunity that could like give back and give back and give back. You took control where you had control. And I think some people just wait for this perfect equation to be able to like push go. And that will hold you back.
It's like saying you'll be ready to have a kid. It's like you're never ever ready to have a kid. You don't understand if your mentality is that there will be a day when I'm ready to have a kid. You don't understand what it means to have a kid, because there is no being ready for that. But yes, that is the bootstrapping mentality, that I reached out and I'm grabbing my bootstrap. I'm going to make this happen, and I'm going to give my life for this. I've spoke about my aversion to bootstrapping in the past based upon my own legacy, is that physically, when you reach down and grab your bootstraps trying to lift yourself up, you only become smaller. You only become more compressed.
Yeah.
You don't expand to grab opportunities. You're just being consumed
with
what's going on. It happened. I didn't know enough about math or business math at the time to know that Irene's addition to the team would pay for itself within 18 months by what she was saving us. That was not even on my horizon. What I knew was I could hand this off to somebody who would do better than me if I was able to go out and do more. It ended up being, at the end of the day, I didn't need to do more for her to make a difference. And then the same with Jamie, my wife, who does HR. Her offset is the lack of time we have to spend in retraining for new positions. Our systems make sense. but we have told people it regularly takes between 3 and 6 months to feel comfortable inside of our systems. That's a
Mhm.
long window of retraining if you don't hire
Yeah.
the right person.
Right.
And so these people, we've learned how to see, yes, there's an initial investment. Yes, it's an overhead cost that is not generating direct revenue. But
Mhm.
what it is doing is really impacting the bottom line, because all I need to do is say, what do I have to do to pay another attorney to come on board and not really be up to speed within 3 months? What's
Mhm.
that investment cost me?
Yes.
And I can
Yes.
start doing those pieces. And all kudos to Irene if she ever listens to this. She taught me this. She
Yeah.
had to break it down, business math, to an 8th grade level, and
Yeah.
talk to me sometimes. And then she'd say something to me, and I'd be like, stop, just stop.
Yeah.
Simpler,
Yeah.
simpler. Break it
Yeah.
down. What's the difference between the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement? I don't understand. Tell me again. And so learning those things help me be a better leader, but I don't have to monitor them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's like the nitty gritty around the decision making that
Yeah.
you have and you've developed. I mean, you develop now because you do rely on more sophisticated math for certain decisions now.
Yeah.
There's probably certain decisions you still make, though, to this day, kinds of decisions where they're newer decisions to make. And so you have to do simple math first until you run it, and then you can get some sophisticated data. So, or
Absolutely.
data to be able to do sophisticated math. I wanted to go back to that. So thank you for
Absolutely.
indulging me there.
Well, to your point, when I launched the new collaborative workspace, one of the first of its kinds in a rural environment, we don't know if it was going to work. We
Mhm,
didn't know if our rural community had enough people that would be
mhm,
interested in it. And we had to do simple math. We had to say,
mhm,
if this fails, can we absorb it? Can we take care of this?
mhm,
And yes, the answer was yes. And then we're like, okay, let's try. And within 2 weeks of opening, I had 80% of the space filled on the dedicated space, and we've had people signing up every couple weeks here
mhm,
for any of the rest. And so seems to be working. But yes, we're
mhm,
evolving the math. We're understanding what the real impact is and
mhm,
what success means in this area. And it's
mhm.
still a long way from this is a big win to know that, but we're well on our way to understanding it even better,
Yeah.
because we're a law firm. We didn't know anything about co-working space before we decided to do it.
Why did you decide to do it?
Oh, this is, I'll make this short. I'm
Okay.
so sick of the single workspace model.
Ah.
There is no reason to have that much investment in infrastructure and overhead for one entity that
Mhm.
people only come see on a bad day.
Mm.
Nobody
Yeah.
likes going to see the lawyer. Nobody's like, yay, I'm going to go do this. But we had a kitchen, and we had HVAC, and we had internet. We were paying for all of these things anyway, and there was no passive draw. There was no passive awareness of us. We were in a building all by ourselves,
Yeah.
and I had said that I am never going to do it again.
Mm.
And when I had the opportunity, I was going to try and build a collaborative workspace. And with like what we have right now, where we've got an engineer who does drawings, and a university's branch of its medical school
Mm.
doing a genetic study, and a sales coach, and a guy who does shoots videos with drones. And
Mm.
we've got this network of people that people walk in now, and the firm is in its place, but it's right there. And then, but they're
Mhm.
not there for the firm, they're there for everybody else, but they're asking questions or giving
Mhm.
tours. There's a lot more latent energy in the atmosphere, and a lot more organic chances for networking
Yeah.
and building a local practice on that model. So like I said, we're not there to the point that we're going to declare this a victory,
Yeah.
but it's definitely appears to be working,
Yeah.
and it appears to be the right move for us.
Mhm. So one of your locations is inside that space.
Yes, our headquarters with one of my local partners. He's the one who speaks Pennsylvania Dutch, and he's the one in our Amish community here. And that had his team, and my 4 operational team members are in that space.
Got it. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Okay. Well, you've said a few things. One of the questions I had for you is, what is one of the biggest barriers that you've experienced, especially since since 2014, when you had this realization that you got to do this differently? But part of me wants to deepen the question because I know you, and let's just see. And you mentioned, the reason that I'm going to ask it this way is because you mentioned, how did you phrase it? That basically you had wins, but then you had things blow up and you had to put the pieces back together again. So my question is, certainly along this entrepreneurial path, and I don't know where stands out to you, probably the day that you pushed your chair back and said, I'm done with this. So when I say barriers, what's one of your biggest barriers? In my mind, I'm thinking, what was a dark night of the soul with your business?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not just barrier, but like effing barrier, right? Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah. This is not the short, quick answer is not to escape that, and I'll build on it in just a second. But my single greatest barrier was actually me.
Mm-hmm.
All of us that go to law school, smart people, none of us are going to sit around and be slouches. That intelligence and that education and that learning can become its own worst enemy, because we forget that our intelligence and knowledge base is in one area. And when it comes to a law firm, that usually doesn't encompass how to balance the books, or how to hire effectively and fire effectively, how to organize your systems in a most efficient manner so you're not wasting time, how to build an invoice. My own worst problem is something that I see very much in some of my own colleagues that I have hired on, is very smart, but we get blinded by that to not see that we're basically novices at best everywhere else. And we don't throw ourselves into that. It was 2018. So here's the expanded story of the dark night of the soul. It was 2018. 3 years after hiring Irene, Jamie coming on some, Erica stepping up into the executive admin position. And what was actually happening as a result of the decision was I was having an identity crisis, because I had done everything. And by spinning it off, we were seeing successes, but I was becoming lost in what it was I was supposed to be doing. Add on top of that some unresolved trauma from the loss of our child in 2006. I was becoming kind of a hot mess. There was unresolved issues that I was having. Law school doesn't help you in any way, in that shape or form. You're practicing way too hard, way too long, and developing a bit of an identity crisis. And it was August of 2018. And I was looking at my team, and we were having a meeting, and I snapped at them. I have never yelled at a single person on my team before or since. And I snapped, and it was stupid. But it would just reach the point in my spirit, my soul, my heart, whatever you want to call it. I just reached that point where I snapped, and I sat back and I went, I'm really sorry. I need a few moments. The decision was made. My wife, being a wonderful person that she is, said, I think you need to leave for a little while. And I was like, I think I do too, but what is a little while? I took a whole month off by myself, and I traveled west. I left Ohio at the beginning of October of 2018, sitting in the parking lot for 45 minutes, racked with fear of, I don't know where I'm going. Fully, I don't know what I'm doing. I can just go back. I have work to do. But that's how deep the identity crisis had gone. That's how dark night of the soul it was for me. And I stayed one night with a friend in Chicago, slept on the banks of the Mississippi River, stayed in the Badlands, went down to your state, Colorado, and hiked Pikes Peak before things shut down,
Oh, wow.
and down into Moab, down to Arizona, where I met a friend, Billy, down in Arizona. And
Gracio.
yep, met Billy, talked to her a little bit about how they do things, and then made a dead sprint back. That month I spent 15 minutes a day talking to my family and no to talk to anybody else.
Mm.
And among other things that helped me, including finding out that when you're having an emotional breakdown at 14,000 feet, you're risking just going to pass out when you cry.
So true.
apparently that is something that happens, with the manly seal cry that came out of my mouth because I could not breathe anymore. But the beyond that healing, beyond that time away, I came back and my team went on a 5-month record-breaking run because I got out of the way. I stopped trying to put my fingers into what Irene was doing and what Jamie was doing, what Erica's doing. I got out of their way. And what happened is when I got out of their way, I was fully able to answer the question, what do I do next? How do I do a value generation different than I've ever done it before? I'm not the lead producer anymore. I'm not doing the books. I'm not needed here. How do I become valuable to this thing next? And until you reach a point where that identity crisis runs its course and you don't keep trying to grab it and shake it and control it with what you can't really come to a point where it's like, oh yeah, there's whole other opportunities out there. There's whole other conversations to have. There's a book I can write. There's speaking I can do. There's brand awareness I can raise. I can do videos. I can do all things that I did not have time before because I was keeping myself busy and where I was comfortable. And as soon as I stepped away, they went on record-breaking runs the whole way through that. And if you want, that's the dark night of the soul, because it was 2014 when I was like, I'm really bad at this, but it took another 4 years until I was like, and I need to stop doing it.
Oh, that's so good because, well, I do think identity crisis is it's the right word, because you create this new reality externally, like with your firm and with all the pieces, but there has to be a pretty big flip for the person who's behind all of that too, because you're used to doing what you're doing. And yeah, plus like we all, you were mentioning that your son passed away in 2006 and there was just unresolved stuff there, and it's like, I think people don't give themselves the space to slow down enough to even think about or process anything until they hit a wall. And then it's it's like life is basically telling you, nope, you don't, it's time to stop and figure stuff out. And I just what a beautiful story. That's it's just a story that I'm sure other people can relate to, myself included. Fun fact, we have a lot of weird synchronicities and we don't need to go into it now, but my dark night of the soul was October 2018. It was a big one, and it probably went beyond a month, but I took a break. It was just a very intense, like, what am I doing, where am I time, because of some things that happened. And so anyway, it's just funny, we have a lot of synchronicities. Same month, it was probably my darkest month I've had. Yeah.
Maybe I was driving through Colorado at the same time. I stopped in Greeley and I stopped in Colorado Springs. That's where I stopped.
Well, you probably drove past Denver. Beep. Hey.
That's right. Hey, I'm in crisis. Don't mind
me. Salute.
But when you asked the question, you said, what was the biggest obstacle? By far, me. In the history of the firm, I was, and I had a 2-day retreat with my attorney team on Friday and Saturday, and we had a good time. We went through axes and ate pizza, and then we got real serious on Saturday. And my newest junior associate was just regaling about law school, and he was talking about how stressed he was and how he didn't eat well and he didn't sleep well, and all of those things that go into creating lawyers that a lot of us can probably identify with, the stress and to some degrees trauma that is created when you're trying to
Yeah.
relearn how to think.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, and it was the first time in my life I realized, and they were going to turn you loose on people to provide legal services. And he stopped for a second, and I went, and you were that unhealthy mentally and emotionally, and you were going to be turned loose on a community to provide legal services. That's something that was a wake-up call too for me and my team, in the sense that these people who are coming to join our team, they're not coming with emotional intelligence. They're not coming with intellectual honesty about their situation. They have no boundaries. They have a very hard time regulating themselves. And they're coming from a performance, especially my youngest ones that went from high school to college to law school, and now they're out, is the proximity and the way they can actually become people that contribute in a healthy way to a firm environment.
Yeah.
I know that there's large firms that will leverage that. They will leverage that lack of boundary setting. They will leverage that lack of
100%
self-regulation and just dictate it. But that's why our industry suffers from so much burnout and so much substance abuse.
It's almost easy. Yes, 100%. And it's almost easier to just stay on that path.
Yeah.
You know, not that it's fun. I don't think anybody would say that I think there's less people than more that would say they really enjoy the environment, but it's what they know. It's no different. It's like entering into a big firm where they do, you know, maybe they take advantage of some boundaries and whatever. That is what's been happening for that attorney for years. And so this just feels comfortable. They know how to perform there. They know how to be there. And to do something on your own can be a breath of fresh air, and it's freaking scary all at the same time, because you can't keep running like that.
But you have to go through that point where it's like, there is a better way.
Yes.
Because if you just take that into your own practice, if you just come from big law and go into your own practice, or you were working for somebody else and now you formed your own, or you're in charge of a firm now that you kind of grew up in, you have to be willing to go through, and I did study theology, so I'm going to say a term that I coined, essential atheism, where if you believed in a God that you grew up with, and you found out, oh man, those people didn't know what they were talking about. That guy's not angry. That guy's not this. That's not what happens. Actually, is psychologically, you have to go through the steps of atheism to disbelieve in that, before
That's
you come to another belief. And in the same way, you go through an essential atheism that you thought, this is what it means to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you have to disbelieve those things and go through the hard process. And some people can't. They just leave at that point in time, because it's like, it's too much of a crisis before it reforms into, this is what it actually means to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And that essential agnosticism or atheism about the industry is something that reshapes really successful lawyers from people who weren't able to set boundaries and weren't able to regulate themselves and weren't able to say success is more than the Audi in the garage.
Right.
Success is a 40-hour work week and you go home and be with your family.
Yeah. 100%. So good. Okay, well, man, I had all kinds of questions ready to roll, and I like where this is going. Okay, this is a question I wanted to ask you. There's probably certain things that came with success. So I guess I'm talking like after you came back and you've had like things took off, you got your hands out of the everybody else's pots. So what is something that comes along with success as you know it now that you didn't expect? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, actually, we had a good discussion about this last week with my ops team when we did a 1-day ops team retreat and a 2-day attorney retreat. And so
Okay.
lots of transparent conversation. One of the things that comes to light most in a success as it's currently defined inside of our firm
Uh-huh.
is the lack of agenda.
Huh.
Because for those in leadership, more
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
the support team knows what they're doing. The ops team knows what they're doing. The practitioners know what they're doing. Everybody's kind of got their place, and we're doing everything we can to continue to make those efficient. And there's always a little twist of the screw that we find that we can do. But those will be ongoing forever. Nothing will ever change there. But in leadership, the lack of agenda is something I did not expect. Because you're no longer being dictated by the tyranny of what's now. You're being dictated by what is next. And what's next doesn't just show up at your door and be like, hey, I had a 3:00 scheduled with you and we're going to go over this will. That's not how it presents itself. And so sometimes one of the things that I found in my new identity was it is essential to wander around a little bit without an agenda. Try, grab this piece over here. Does it fit here? Grab this conversation and this relationship and let's mash them together and have a conversation. Jump on this new app and just talk about what you're doing, and one with no agenda of meeting Melissa. Sometimes you literally, in a place where success happens like that, you have to be comfortable knowing it will come. Things will come for you to work on. But some days you sit back and you go, I don't know. The team is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm going to be available. And so I'm going to read, I'm going to listen to some podcasts, I'm going to think about the firm and try and deconstruct it and reconstruct it in my mind. Look at what our next opportunity. I mean, we had a meeting last Thursday's meeting set out where we're going to try and open in January and where we're going to try and open next June. Literally, the team has designed a process that's so efficient in opening a new office. I don't have to do anything with it until October. I know when I need to start doing something with it. I know how long it'll take. But between now and October, I don't have to think about that. I don't have to think about that expansion.